All right, everyone, welcome to the Beyond Sunday podcast, the space where we get to carry the conversation beyond Sunday. Today is a fun one because we've got Henry with us again, and you guys got to team preach this week, so that was kind of cool. I also got to have Jamie join me here at Next Step, but she's not able to be with us today, so we'll get into the conversation about what God's still saying, but before we do, take a look at this video.
All right, guys, we dive into the conversation. Shreya, tell us what was the big idea and the main text for this Sunday?
Yeah, so we're talking about being content as we walk with Jesus, like being content with Jesus, knowing He sustains and provides. And we were in a few different places, as we usually are, but Luke 12 is kind of where we were sitting mostly. I also was in, well, actually a number of different places, but mostly Luke 12. And I think for you guys, Luke and Psalms also were kind of the two key texts for you.
Yeah, Psalm 107, Luke 12. And so, yeah, I think as God was revealing this message weeks prior, it was like I don't even know if this is there's things in here that'll always speak to me, but for this Sunday, I was like, I don't know. And As Henry even said on Sunday, like um, uh, some some coincidental events, right? And I use coincidence like Henry was doing in facetious tone. Can you hear tone, Shreya?
Always.
Oozing.
Uh, but that brought to light that maybe this wasn't just for me, and so inviting Henry into this, and so I shared the scriptures with Henry, and then it was like maybe this is one we do together, um, and so that's where it came up of like what Henry, what's speaking to you, and again the Luke 12 for me being the thread, pulling that thread, and then Henry's like, oh, it's Psalm 107. And so Henry, with Psalm 107, what was the the significant piece within that psalm for you?
Well, what was with me on Sunday is unpacked even more for me.
Perfect.
And so like it's we read, oh, give thanks to the Lord for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. And then it says, let the redeemed of the Lord say so. And then you take a journey through the rest of Psalms 107, and you have the section of 4 to 9 says, some wandered in the waste. And it's like, well, who are the some? Well, that is the redeemed. There are some of the redeemed that wandered in the waste, finding no way to a city, hungry and thirsty, and their soul fainted within them. Then they cried to the Lord for their trouble. So that's the first group that I see. Um, who are the redeemed, who need to give thanks to the Lord for he is good, and that his steadfast love endures forever. And then 10 through 13, 10 through 16 is the next ones. And it starts off with it saying, some redeemed sat in darkness and in shadow and death, prisoners of afflictions and iron. And we might immediately start to feel sorry for them. But then we also immediately are confronted with the reality that it's their fault. Like they had rebelled against the words of God and spurned the counsel of the Most High. So this group of people is in a predicament of rebellion against whatever God had commanded them to do. And yet we see in verse 13 that we have a God who, when they had cried to the Lord, he delivered them. So even in their own stupidity and their own cesspool of their own making, God still comes in and delivers them, which is the steadfast love that we need to be celebrating. And then the next group is some were fools. What fools? Well, there's some redeemed that are fools. There are some redeemed that rebel against God, and there are some redeemed that at one point in time were wandering looking for him. They just didn't know how. They were using their eyes, but they weren't using their voices to cry out to God. And so you have this group of fools. And then for me, the last one I was like really wrestling with here, and it says some went down into the sea in ships, and so some redeemed went down into the sea in ships and doing business in great waters, and they saw the deeds of the Lord and his wondrous works in the deep. So I take it like these are people who are really confident and they have a mastery over something, or they think that they have a mastery over something, right? They do have a mastery like we would look at it, like they're masters of the ocean, they're masters of what I might say chaos, because that's how we're supposed to look at these waters. And then and they're going out into new spaces. They're businessmen. They're making money. There's a level of confidence about them, and a reminder: these are also redeemed. These are people that God values. But then it says, "For He commanded and raised the stormy winds, which lifted up the waves of the sea." So these people think that they have a mastery of something, but God's like, just when you think you have a mastery of something or I would say not even a mastery, but an understanding of something that you really don't have an understand, or your understanding is like a small fragment of what it is. Like if you think you have mastery at 100%, you actually have mastery at 1%.
Mhm.
And then verse 26 is they mounted up to heaven. So it's like they had these moments where they were in heaven. They had these moments where they were in hell. There was like joyful experiences and crazy chaotic experiences um, that this group has, and they reeled and staggered like drunken men, and they were at their wits' end. And then it says, and then they cried out,
Yeah.
and and the Lord to the Lord in their trouble, and He delivered them from their distresses. And for me, what I was sitting in over the past couple days is this. I wrote this phrase down because it even ties a little bit to like when Jesus calms the storm, we oftentimes forget that the man who calms the storm is also the one who called the storm in the first place. He's God. He has authority over it all.
Mhm.
So he had authority over the storm. We just don't think about it because he's sleeping, which kind of might also reflect the idea that if he's sleeping, he ain't worried about it, right? And he has control over that. And then he shows them that he also has control over that. So I wrote this quote is that the same God who calls the storm also calms the storm. And so sometimes we think we have mastery of things, and God's like, yeah, just when you thought you did, you didn't. And I still need that group of people to call out to me too, just as much as the ones who stepped in their own mess, who were foolish, who were lost, wandering sheep. Every spectrum of people across this planet still have um, they're going to get into a position where they're going to cry out to me, and what they need to know is that I will be faithful in answering them.
Yeah. Steadfast.
I will be steadfast in answering them because it's who he is. The steadfast love isn't just a character quality of him. It is who he is.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Shay, what's still sitting with you from Sunday?
Yeah, so for me the thing like starting in Luke 12, well also I was sitting with this the week prior, like, okay, what is this? Like, what do you have here for me? Because this is a not an unfamiliar passage, but also like, okay, God, so what's the thing here? And what struck me in the Luke 12 passage, this parable, it's this parable of like, okay, so this rich man has this farm and it produces fertile crops. And he's like, I don't have room. Like, I'm getting so many crops. This is so great. I don't have room. I'll build bigger barns so that I can store all of this. And then once I've done that, I'll sit back. Like, once I've worked and filled these bigger barns, I'll sit back. And at that point, I'll take it easy and eat and drink and be merry and whatever. And then God's like, you're gonna lose everything. You're gonna die tonight and lose everything. And specifically, he says, then who will get everything you worked for? And the worked for piece struck me because I know that part of this parable, the point here is like, yeah, essentially, where is my treasure lie? Like, what am I storing up here on earth? But the thing that struck me was the rich man in the parable was like, I'm going to enjoy life once I have reached this certain point. Like,
Mhm.
once the barns, bigger barns are built, once things are stored up or whatever. And so then that's a direct tie into Ecclesiastes, which is another one of the lectionary scriptures, where essentially, as often happens in the book of Ecclesiastes, is like everything is meaningless, work is meaningless. I might as well just enjoy life right now, but that's kind of meaningless too. And so there was just this, for me, this sense of like, actually what happens right now matters. So like the journey that I'm on, um, I think that we can sometimes we can have a tendency to like, okay, someday I'll get to heaven and that destination matters and that's what I'm looking for and longing for. And not that that's bad or wrong, like it's certainly not the idea of having eternal focus, but there's something that Jesus offers us here and now. And so John 10 came to mind of the abundant life. And so then the question of like, yeah, what does it look like for me to not just be biding my time or working away in the here and now, even for good things as I'm like waiting for the someday, but to also recognize that I actually have, uh, I can be content in the abundant life that Jesus has offered me right now. And what's that look like? And then further, like if you take that point further, the piece that landed that felt like a word for our church even for this week was like also then what are we offering other people? So when I'm looking at the people God's put in my life, am I offering them a destination of like, come to my church or someday you can go to heaven? Or am I offering them like, hey, life is hard, but if you say yes to Jesus, he'll actually walk with you right now. And if I'm not recognizing that in my own life, if I'm not content or celebrating the abundant life that he's giving right now, then it's going to be really hard for me to be telling other people about that or offering that. And so what tends to happen is this like, yeah, just the invitation is like come to my church, say yes to Jesus so you don't go to hell, instead of like say yes to somebody who will walk with you right now, like
Yeah.
here and now through all of it.
Yeah. And I remember when you and I were looking through these scriptures, and I was like, when Jesus is talking using this parable, and then he offers the statement that the man makes of like, I've built this bigger barn, and I'm many good things laid up for many years. So take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry, which then Shreya, like you said, the tie into Ecclesiastes that Henry, you're like, man, I spent a lot of years in my youth in Ecclesiastes. I don't really want to spend any more time there. And for me, I was in Ecclesiastes 1 and 2, and I was like, yeah, there is the chasing after the wind piece, that I was headed down this rabbit hole of like, because as he's talking about the things that we put our attention to, that's like chasing after the wind, you're just never going to catch it. And also then my thought, like, what am I still doing that's chasing after the wind? That's like focused on maybe something I want, building a bigger barn to store my things or get more, or it's more about me and less about God's with me on this journey, and I'm not attuned, I'm not attuned to him, so it's more like chasing after the wind. And so that's where I went down this road of just what am I still doing today that's chasing after the wind? Like, am I more concerned with or overvaluing something that God's like, look, I didn't put that much value on that, but you are, and it's too much. Not that God doesn't value these certain things, but like, what are the things and areas that I'm putting too much value, overvaluing, and not being attuned to God?
Yeah, or I think, and maybe the piece for me, because that's true, absolutely, and I think that's a question we have to probably always keep in front of ourselves. In fact, I think that's where we're headed, even in this coming Sunday. But the other piece for me is like, where have I undervalued what God's offering now? And I think that's what was sitting with me because like um, we live in a world of brokenness. We live in the now with a promise and a hope for the not yet. But in the now and in a world of brokenness that God's still working to reconcile, have I undervalued his presence with me? Have I undervalued what he's the abundant life that he's offering now? And I think sometimes the answer is yes. And I think as Christians as a whole, sometimes the answer is yes. And so what we offer people is like the world is a mess, but someday God's gonna like do this thing. And there's this not yet piece that
Probably the
we're
right time.
yeah, and again, not that that's true. I mean, yes, we should set our eyes on, things of the eternal nature, like absolutely. And Jesus is like, I came to give you life right now, an abundant life, and I will walk with you. And so if I undervalued what Jesus is, the like, have I missed out on delighting in him and delighting even in the world that he's created and what he has given? And that was the piece for me. This guy in the parables, like, someday I'll eat and drink and be merry. And I just wonder if God's not like, well, actually, like you can delight now. I've given you things now that you can delight in.
Yeah,
Um, me first
right,
and foremost. But
right.
um,
And in this way you can, I mean, in the troubled waters you may find yourself, you can cry out to me and I will hear you.
yeah,
Wherever
yeah,
you are, I will hear you.
right. Yeah, and so am I so focused on the destination that I'm missing Jesus on the journey with me, I guess is the piece that was sitting for me. And some of that I told a story the week before, the Sunday before, Marcus and the boys and I went up to Snoqualmie Pass. There's like a random restaurant at the top of the pass that's really good that we go to sometimes. Well, when we went up this time, it was packed, and I've never seen it packed like this. But apparently, there was a marathon that had just happened. I don't know if you know this, but some people that this was like a special one because it's two marathons in 2 days. So these people run 26.2 one day, and then the next day they run another 26.2, which just sounds so stupid, but it's a thing. Um, and so we were up there, and I was inside, like there's all this outdoor seating. Marcus and the boys were outside. I went in to order something, and I was
Wait,
standing
wait,
in line.
wait. Hold on before you continue this story. What's your best marathon time?
Better than yours. Don't even worry about it. Come for me with that business.
Okay, so you're
Anyways,
outside, they go inside.
My
so I'm
best
standing
marathon
inside.
time is 0.
Yeah. I'm waiting in line, and there's this guy in front of me who clearly just ran, like very clearly has just run. And a guy walks past him who also clearly has just run. And so I'm standing here waiting and I'm listening. This guy stops and I'm listening to their interaction. They know each other, give each other a hug, and like, oh my gosh. So the guy in line in front of me is like, Tom, it's so great to see you. Like, I'm so glad I got to see you today. I'm so glad you were here. And he's like, I'm so glad you had your book with you. I've been meaning to order one and I hadn't had a chance. I'm so glad to get it. And uh, this guy Tom that he's talking to is like, yeah, it's so good to be here and it's so good to see you. And my next book is coming out in December, depending on on how things progress. And he says something, makes some comment about the book is going to be about running the Boston Marathon multiple times or whatever, as one does. And so they have this interaction. They give each other this big hug. And the other guy keeps walking out. Well, the guy in front of me turns around and tears are streaming down his face. And he goes, whew, the allergies, am I right? And I was like, yikes, like I don't know what to do with this. Like, oh gosh, they're there. And he goes, that man right there is an inspiration. And I said, yeah, did I hear that he's run the Boston Marathon multiple times? And he goes, well, yeah, I think three. He'll run it for the fourth time this next time. And I said, wow, that's really impressive. He goes, well, actually, that's not the impressive part. He goes, he's run over 600 marathons. And I was like, okay, so that's impressive. And he goes, but
No
that's
one
not the
likes a
impressive.
bragger.
What?
No one
Well,
likes a bragger.
he's bragging on behalf of this guy, okay? But he goes, that actually isn't the impressive part either. He goes, he's done all 600 with stage 4 cancer. And I was like, oh, okay. So
Okay,
there,
that's cool.
that part. So then this guy in front of me, again, tears are streaming down his face, and he's like, this guy, Tom Perry is his name, because then of course I did all the Googling and research and watching the interviews and whatever. But this guy, so he's been a runner for forever. A number of years ago, he got this diagnosis of stage 3 cancer that quickly progressed to stage 4. And then what he said was like, okay, cancer is going to tell me what I can do, but it's not going to tell me what I can't do. And so every day I feel good, I'm going to keep running. And so he's run over 600 marathons, like over 100,000 miles. Like he's run a marathon on every day of the year. It's crazy. Like all this stuff is crazy and super inspirational. But the piece for me, and one of the things he says in his interviews in one of his books or whatever is he says something about like when I'm gone, I don't want people to remember me for the numbers. I want people to remember me. They call him Pacer Tom. It's like I want people to remember Pacer Tom, and I want them to remember that maybe I helped him cross the finish line or inspired them to run a marathon. Because in all of these races, what he does is he finishes the marathon and then he goes back as a pacer for a slower group of people. So he runs the marathon himself and then goes back to help people finish. And that's just kind of always been his thing. And so there was something in the moment as all of that's happening. I was like, wow, like super inspiring. And also, God, there's something here. There's some kind of peace here. And the guy in front of me was like, everybody should run a marathon. He goes, what are you doing up here? I'm like, oh, my family and I came to eat lunch and look at the view and whatever. And he's like, you and your husband and your boys need to run a marathon. And I was like, well, yeah, maybe, maybe that. And he's like, it's not about the running. It's about all the other things. And I was like, but still, there is the running piece. Like that's like a pretty important
You're,
part of it.
you're like, wait,
Um,
you haven't seen me run. You
You're a jerk. I did not offer that. But I guess the thing that was sitting, so in that moment, I was like, God, there's something here. And then towards the end of the week on Friday, as I was looking through notes for this message again, the thing that hit was like, there's somebody who understands the journey, like his destination, his end point. Like he has probably a better grasp than the rest of us do of how fragile life can be, because he just doesn't know. On any given day, he doesn't know how he's going to feel. He also doesn't know what his timeline looks like. And with that in mind, even though that's true for all of us, with that in mind for him in a really tangible way, he's like he does understand what it is to enjoy the right now and the here and now and to make this matter. And so there was something in that piece of like, yeah, where have I undervalued what God's offering right now and the life that he's given now?
well, like to choose today. I mean, yeah, I maybe having a grasp that like mortality and I don't know when the end is coming or how I'll feel in this day, but I'll choose today to live.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think that's some of what I hear in that parable, which is not something I've ever pulled out before, because I think typically I just always think it's about the like greed and trying to get more. But I think that some of what I hear is like you spent all your life working and waiting for like at some point, then I'll enjoy this life. And now you don't get to because you like God's like, you will die this night. So then what? And so there is something about like, am I choosing today to delight in God, to value, to be content that Jesus is with me in this?
Yeah, there you go. Maybe start with a 5K.
I have done a 5K. Thank you
All
very much.
right. Oh, maybe
Multiple and a
everyone.
10K. Stop. Don't talk. Don't say anything else. Henry, what's God saying?
Don't you think everyone ought to know, Shreyas?
No, because you're going to offer it in a way that doesn't make me look good. And I don't know what that's going to be, but I'm not going to come across well. That's what I know.
Okay, maybe Henry just wants to know. Henry, do you want to know?
I do not want to know.
Thank you. Oh my
You're welcome,
gosh.
Shay,
Thank
because it's all
you.
meaningless.
It's all meaningless. Everything is meaningless.
Well, I mean, but I say that in just in this conversation, but like even while you guys are talking, I'm reading about 61-year-old, which at this time he's 61, he's now 65, stage 4 prostate cancer, all that running. But if the destination he's running to isn't to Jesus, it
Right.
doesn't matter.
Right.
It's cool that he wants, and look, I'm not being critical of that. It's
No.
just in the context of this
Yep.
conversation, it's like the fascination with that is that's amazing. But we don't run just to cross the finish line. We run to obtain something like Paul says too. And even at that, I have a hard time imagining that because I don't run. Um, unless it's dinner bell or something like that. I don't know. But I think in the end, it's also I want to know more of Mr. Perry's story. I think that that's really super cool. I'm not as much about the running part, but like,
Correct.
where did he come to? Did he have a moment where he cried out to God? I
Right.
don't know.
Right.
Because ultimately that me going back to 107, because that's the only space that I stayed in. It was like, yeah, I don't, Holy Spirit's not guide me into these other spaces. We're just whoosh, right there. And it's like ultimately all of these happen. I wrote down, do you feel like a wanderer? Do you feel like a rebel against God? Do you feel like you're one of the stupid people? Do you feel like you're the confident one? And really, at the end of the day, all four of those, what they had in common was is that they came to a point where what they were doing um, was not enough, and they needed something more. And what they needed was they needed the steadfast love of God, so that He could step in and guide them, take them, free them, take them to higher places than they thought they had gone before. All of that comes from the one who is in it all, and he's just sitting there waiting for us to cry out to him. I did a The cry out thing is like kind of like Zedekiah, but it's like two different types of cry out, and three times are just a loud cry with a general desperation, but one of them is an intense cry or an emotional cry. And I found it interesting that the one that was the intense cry or the emotional cry was from the ones who rebelled against God. Like there was a deeper sense of their stupidity, and that when they had finally come to a point, which who knows if that's 2 days or 10 years or whatever it is, that type of cry was very different. Um, and I'm still trying to figure that out, but
Well, it's
it's
like the ones
interesting.
who know, like, I need a rescue and a rescuer. I'm desperate.
But I also think it's I need a rescue or a rescuer, and it's the one whom I rebelled against that I have to cry back out to.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes.
Right? The other ones, they don't necessarily have an idea, but the ones who did rebel against God's word, they're like, look, I put myself in this situation knowing full well that the one who I'm going to have to cry out to is the one telling me not to do this.
It requires a different kind of humility to cry out
Yeah.
in that space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as we bring this episode to a close, let's share Kairos. What's God saying, and how is He inviting you to respond? I feel that most of our conversation so far has been Kairos. So I don't know whether it's we need to tie that into a bow of like, here's I think what it is that God's saying and how He's inviting me to respond. But yeah, let's share Kairos.
Go ahead, Henry.
Um, Mine is when I think I have mastery of something, I don't. And even in that space where I think I have an understanding of what I'm doing, even when I'm chasing and pursuing God, there's still a time where you still need to call out to him. That like when you feel like everything's going really, really good, there is no need to call out to him, but there actually is a need to call out to him. And sometimes even in that journey where you think like everything's going really good or you think you have everything mastered, what he's really wanting us to do is go, you know what, I don't have all this mastered. And in all actuality, I actually do need you. I don't I'm trying to do this all on my own power because I know how to do all of this stuff, allegedly, or I think I do. Um, and then you're in it, and there's this measure of this humbling experience of, okay, I've been brought to a point where I thought I had control, or I thought I had an understanding of what's going on, and I just don't. And that's okay. But also the cool thing is like you also get to witness all the amazing stuff that God's been doing. And so I've been sitting in that space with the guys in the boat, right, or the guys on the ship. It's just like, mastery over the ocean's pretty cool. And you can think that you have full mastery of it. And then all of a sudden you hit a wave that takes you as high as you've ever been. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, like a roller coaster. And then you get to the top of that and the boat starts to tip back down, and you're like, oh my gosh, we're going to die. And in both of those experiences, you're witnessing that God's going to take you somewhere you've never been before. It's not the destination, it's the who are you doing it with? Who's walking alongside you and who's going to call? And I'm not saying, yes, it's your friends, yes, it's all those things. Yes, it's your, like if you're using the boat example, it's like the captain and the shipmates and all that. Yeah, you're doing that with someone. But at the end of the day, the one who you're doing it with is the one who has control of the calm sea, as well as the one whom called the waves and the wind and did all those things so that you can cry out to him, and then he can go, okay, I'm with you. Because that's what he wants to say. He wants to say,
Yeah.
I'm with you. He wants you to recognize that you think you're out doing this in your own power and you're not. I am with you. And I want you to reach out, and I want you to acknowledge that I'm with you, and I'm actually the one who's in control of all this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that echoes my kairos, which is at the face value, it was the man building a bigger barn just to store up his stuff and having no mind of God, and that's really where Jesus ends this parable before he gets into the don't worry, right? So don't worry about tomorrow. But the like what am I putting the question for me was like, what am I putting my hands to, my effort to, my attention to? Um, and do I have in mind that God is with me? Do I have in mind that God desires to be with me in the things that He's even provided and put before me to put my hands to work at, to yeah, be a part of my life and of ministry and of yeah, that God's like, I want to be with you in that. I've prepared this for you. I want to be with you. So in that way, it's like my very presence. Like, don't think that what I've put before you that's just for you. I want to be there with you. That's why I put it there, and I want to be with you as you do it. Like the invitation of God coming to Adam and Eve in the cool of the morning. I just want to be with you. I want to be with you, and I put you here in this garden to tend to it. So there's work to do. I want to be with you while you do it.
Yeah, that's good. I think for me, the piece that's sitting is the continuation of like, okay, so if the first thing God's telling me or reminding me is that it isn't just about the destination, but it's about recognizing or where I've undervalued Him with me in this journey. If that's the first piece, then the continuation of that is like, uh, how does that show up in the way that I'm interacting with the people around me? And so like Second Corinthians 5 came to mind, and this idea of like being an ambassador of reconciliation, um, in some ways, even that parallel between this idea of like, and again, the analogy probably breaks down at some point, but with this guy who's like, I just finished a marathon and I'm going back and I'm walking with other people, I'm running with other people, to help them get across the line, to encourage them, to support them, to be with them on the journey. And so there's something in that. And even the guy in front of me in line, he was like one of the things that struck me was just how passionate, like honestly, I probably am never going to run a marathon. Um, but he was so passionate about it. And so there was just something really like a good reminder of like this is something that he loves, that he has found joy in so many spaces. And do I look that way when I talk about the Jesus that I've found that I'm walking with. And when I'm talking to other people about like, yeah, this is what life looks like for me because I said yes to Jesus. And so there's something in that that when I think about being an ambassador of reconciliation, like maybe it does look more like that than what we make it out to be sometimes. So
Yeah, it's good. How many 5Ks have you done, Shreya?
I'm not answering this question.
I think
What do you mean?
here I'm going to
More
help
than
you.
you,
Shay,
again,
I'm going to
more than
help you.
you.
We're going to deflect that question
Thank
and
you.
we're going to go to I think the other thing that jumped out in the story that you told me is how many times do we turn around weeping with this realization of just how awesome God is?
Mm.
And then going, the allergies, am I right?
Right. That was
You
like,
know,
in fact, you've said that to me, Henry.
what, the allergies?
Yeah.
What, when?
When you had to get off your tractor and lay in the middle of a field because those darn allergies got you.
No, well, that was a legit thing too. I mean, there
Actually,
were
allergies?
legit,
No, it wasn't.
I was rubbing my face in the grass. So, I mean, there's like
Okay, well, that okay. Allergies after the fact to like have a reason, it's not the same.
Well, it's just
allergies, am I right?
the blades of grass needed a little bit more nutrients.
Yeah.
Irrigation.
But Henry, before we wrap up this episode, why don't you share on this one just about the impacting to you? Like, so if people want to know about Impact Campus Ministries, if people want to know about what God has called you into and what you said
Hmm.
yes to, where can they go?
Um, how much time do I have? 3 minutes? Is that what we're looking at? three
Well, I
minutes?
just learned this phrase not too long ago, but it's called a sizzle reel, apparently.
You
Oh,
just learned it. Oh God.
well, I'm never going to be on one of those.
Oh my gosh. Did you have to Google
Um,
that, Devin?
don't Google it. It could lead to bad things.
It's a legitimate thing.
Um, like it's really interesting because a lot of what's going on with impact, at least with us in our church in our community, the language is just starting to bleed out a little bit into some spaces, and that's really cool to see. Um, with impact, you can go to www.impacttheu.com. I think it's .com. I'm pretty sure it's .com.
Because I'll put it in
It is
the
.com. Because I was
Trey will
like,
put it in the show notes.
is it org or .com? But it's .com.
Okay.
You can go there. You can just kind of get a small snapshot glimpse of what impact's about. Some of the language that you'll hear me using and some people are picking up is that we have this desire. Our values are to pursue, model, teach, and the pursuit part has nothing to do with the people that are around me. It has everything to do with me. And and I need to be pursuing an intimate relationship with God. And then as I'm walking around in my ministry space at the college or just in my everyday life, that I'm modeling it. And I'm not even knowing I'm modeling it, but the reality is I am modeling this pursuit of an intimate relationship with God. And then I believe that through both of those things, and we're invited into this opportunity to come alongside and teach others. And that's what we're doing at the college campus. I'd say we're doing it with students, but I think the question that we're navigating at Centralia is how do you define a student now? It's not the traditional student. It's a generational conversation, but it's not just students, it's faculty and staff. And that's been a really fun journey to be on. Um, but pursue model teach also because we believe that when students leave the college and go into the workforce, what we're wanting them to understand is that whatever profession that they choose to go into, whether it is ministry or not, whether they're a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, a police officer, or whatever, a construction worker, whatever they decide to go into and do, it is in fact actually what we would consider that to be their sacred vocation. And if they also have picked up this idea that they need to pursue Jesus so that they can model it to their coworkers or their employers or their employees, um, it also will enable them to also come alongside people and teach what that looks like, and that's multiplication and discipleship, and that's how we impact the world. And so that's why if we believe that if we impact the you, we impact the world. And so that's the model, that's the mission of Impact Campus Ministries.
Yeah,
So
it's
in a
good.
nutshell.
That's
So
good. That's a good scissor reel.
really,
Yeah.
okay, well, maybe when you do the scissor reel, you can give me some hair.
I'll put it in post production, just like Shay will put it in the show notes.
Sizzle reel. Kids these days.
Honestly. All right, guys. Well, thanks for being with us on this episode of Beyond Sunday. We hope and pray that your conversations are going beyond Sunday. So take care.